All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It is the Friday after Thanksgiving. What is that? Today is the 29th day of November. Yeah, yesterday was the last day. The 28th is the last day that Thanksgiving can fall in the month. And I was confused about that. I thought the rule was the last day, or let me put it differently. I thought the rule was Thanksgiving falls on the last Thursday of the month, falling before the last Friday of the month, which would mean that you couldn't have Thanksgiving Day on the 30th, right? If the 30th of November was Thursday, right? If the 30th was a Thursday, Thanksgiving is always on a Thursday. If the 30th of November is a Thursday, then Thanksgiving would be on the 23rd, which is actually true. If the 30th is a Thursday, it would be on the 23rd, but that's not the rule. The rule is Thanksgiving Day is the fourth Thursday of the month, the fourth Thursday. And the fourth Thursday of the month can fall no later than the 28th. If the 29th is a Thursday, then that would be the fifth Thursday of the month. So that's the rule. The fourth Thursday is Thanksgiving, and that can be anywhere between the 22nd, which would be if the first day of the month was a Thursday, then the 22nd is the fourth Thursday. And if the first day of the month is a Friday, November 1 being Friday, then the 28th would be the fourth Thursday. Now, I thought, again, it was the last Thursday after the last Friday, which would mean it could actually be the 29th. If Friday were the 30th, you could have the 29th. Now, I know everyone's really interested in that. If you want to tell me about your experiences, and I did test the ringer, it's working. So hopefully I'll be able to get your calls. I know last Wednesday, John tried to call in and it didn't ring. And we have some numbers that don't seem to work for whatever reason. Stephanie's had the same problem. I don't know what to do about it, folks. I'm very, very, very sorry. But anyway, try, and if I see it ring, and if you can't get through, text that same number, 240-242-5646. You can also put a message in the the chat for the program, and hopefully I'll see that. So there are various ways you can still reach me. Hopefully one of those will work. Yeah, today's the Black Friday special. Now, I wasn't definitely going to do a program today. I told you Wednesday there was a good chance I wouldn't. Yesterday, I was really enjoying my Thanksgiving whole day, great day, really nice. Had some family members over, and I want to thank my mom. 110. Well, I want to thank my mom. I want to thank my wife especially for doing an incredible job with the feast. She did incredible dessert. She made from scratch apple pie, pecan pie, pumpkin pie. Everything was amazing. The turkey. So thank you so much, Mindy, for that great meal. I really appreciate it. I know all of our guests did as well, who were able to share the repast with us. So it was very, very nice. And I decided I was going to do the program. Woke up this morning and I thought, I feel fine. Didn't drink very much. There's no reason for me not to do it. I'm very fortunate I get to do this, and I enjoy doing it. And even though I wouldn't mind taking the day off, there's a lot in the news I want to get to. If you want to share your experiences from Thanksgiving yesterday, please do. Whatever they are, would love to hear from them. I will not deviate from my normal procedure, which is, again, even though it is, kind of a special day, I guess, a little bit different than normal, I will not deviate, which is to focus on the victims of American empire and our genocidal ally, Israel. The situation, there was no Thanksgiving in Gaza. There's no respite for the Palestinians in Gaza. 40 dead over the 24 hours ending at past midnight. So there you see it. I don't know what else to say. And again, the numbers, I give you that count, and it's iffy, right? I mean, we know that the official count is far lower than the true number that Israel's killed with our weapons, with our full-blooded support, unwavering support, as the vice president has put it. We have close to, or perhaps over 44,300. I have over 44,300 based on the count we had as of Wednesday, 2 days later, with 40 more dead just from one day. That doesn't even include Wednesday, but it only includes yesterday, Thursday. We have almost certainly well over 44,300 officially. And again, the numbers are a little bit, it takes a little bit of time sometimes for different news services to update. So I can't always be confident. I'm giving you the most current official number from the Palestinian Ministry of Health, which is, again, the source and has been shown over and over and over again to be very reliable and, if anything, to significantly understate the true number of victims of the Israeli genocide. It's just the worst thing. And we got a call from good friend of the show yesterday. Sorry if it was blinking there. Good friend of the show the last show I did, but this would have been Wednesday, who chided me for perhaps focusing too much on Israel and Palestine. And I don't get that. I mean, this is our supposedly closest ally, and using our weapons to commit a genocide, I don't know what could be more important. I understand some people, and the argument that they made was, hey, you got to look at the Supreme Court. No matter what, you can't rule out a candidate like a Harris. Even if you are very upset about her Palestine-Israel policy, in the end, what we have to do is protect the integrity of the courts. And you know what? I understand that argument. And I think that's the best argument in favor of the Democrats. And I've said that before, but I agree. It is a argument that is legit. Ultimately, I won't endorse it. Ultimately, I will not vote for genocide. Ultimately, I will not vote for a party or the leader of a party who is fully invested in that party's policies, who has demonstrated that they will make things worse. We are right now facing various existential threats, and I will not vote for that party that is exacerbating those, making them worse. This is what the conversation with the great guest on Tuesday, right? It was when did I have? It was Tuesday that we had on Kirsten Stade, who was outstanding, and I'm hopefully going to get her on again too. By the way, see Ari in the chat. Hey, Ari, good to see you. Ari, always a pleasure. And if you want to join me, go ahead. I know he doesn't like to call. Some people don't like to call, which is very, very cool. All right, I want to get to this video here. Now, Harris is getting an awful lot of, people are dunking on her. And, look, I understand why you would. The video she doesn't look good in this, right? I mean, she really doesn't. People are saying, is she drunk? That's occurred to me. And my suspicion is maybe, yeah, or at least on some kind of meds. Maybe not drunk, but on meds. But the point of this, showing this segments of this video that she released, I guess it was to thank her campaign staffers, thank her running mate, Tim Walz. She spends a little time doing that. It's not to dunk on her. It's not to say, oh, what a joke, oh, blah, blah, blah. Trump deserved to win or she deserved to lose, which I actually agree she deserved to lose. That's not the point. The point I'm making is we have to go in a different direction. It's not just about Kamala Harris. It's about her party. It's about the leadership that anointed her, that determined she was the right person to represent the party, both as vice president and as presidential nominee. That's the point. The point isn't, oh, look at what a clown Kamala is. I don't think she's a clown. I just think she's somebody who was chosen to be the Democratic representative because she will do what the Democratic elites want, because she will do what the billionaire funders want, because she will do what the military industrial complex and the lobbyists want. That's why she got the job. And because that's why she got the job, we have to go somewhere else. We have to look at an alternative to the Democratic Party.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Back at you, brother. You are such an extraordinary leader, and we have become lifelong friends.
I mean, there's something weird about her look there. Again, she seems, strangely, I don't know, medicated. I want to say drunk, but that's what I guess the Young Turks were saying. I think there's some kind of medication. Probably she got depressed. I'm sure that's why she lost. I mean, she lost and, she got depressed. This is a problem that I have with this, among many others. But let me start with this. She's still vice president. We are in crisis mode in this country. Things are getting worse and worse. There's opportunities still to address some of the worst challenges we face. And it's obvious and it's understandable. Look, I'm not condemning her for this, but she's not a statesperson. She's not a stateswoman, right? The term is they're statesmen. She's not a stateswoman. She's not putting the interests of our nation first. She's wallowing in some kind of self-pity. And that's why she got the job. That's why she got offered the job. Because somebody who had true principles, true convictions, who truly wants to make America a better place wouldn't be acceptable to the special interests that run the Democratic Party.
I want to thank you, Tim. You lead with courage. You lead with heart. You see the people. You care about the people. You believe in uplifting the dignity.
So I'm going to stop it there. Now, one of the things, and I'll jump ahead because we don't need to, but I want to play a little more from this because I really, really think it's instructive and it's for people to understand. Kamala Harris only talks in platitudes, only talks in generalizations with very, very few exceptions. She refuses to get pinned down on policy. And the reason is because that's not why she was chosen to be the nominee. Remember, we didn't elect her. In fact, when we had an opportunity, we rejected her soundly in 2020. So there's no policy preferences that we're aware of. That's why she got the job, because policy doesn't matter. It's you do what the billionaire funders want you to do. You do what the people who provide the golden parachutes to Congress want you to do. And that's invariably bad policy. That's invariably what's harmed our country. So she can't enunciate policy. Now, my guess is she doesn't really have any policies. So she's the perfect vessel. She's the perfect cipher. And that's why she was chosen. And that's why we can't go back to the Democratic well. Who else would we, this was one of the arguments that we heard from strategists. Well, maybe she was the wrong person. We should have had someone, who was maybe a little more charismatic, a Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. And yeah, someone like that probably could have won, I think, maybe. We don't know. But in the end, we'd still be in the same place we're in because they wouldn't be pursuing policies to make the American people better off. They'd be pursuing policies to make the billionaire class even richer and have even tighter control over our country. They'd be pursuing policies that give even more influence to imperialist, multinational, corporations with imperialist aspirations and the military-industrial complex. Again, what's not in the best interest of the American public or the planet. So therefore, we have to go in a different direction. Who are the alternatives? Gavin Newsom? Amy Klobuchar? I mean, none of them, right? You could go down the list. I don't know. John Tester? Who are the names you hear? Wes Moore? There's not one person there that's identified with truly pro-people, anti-war, pro-peace, pro-life policies. Not one of them. I suppose AOC, but she's so compromised. Think of it this way. Kamala Harris, somebody who can only speak in platitudes, has no specific policy proposals, representations, none. Wholly, completely unreservedly endorsed by AOC, by Bernie Sanders. So again, this party is the wrong party. This party is not the solution. This party is the problem. Now, I understand, people, there's the courts, it's a big tent, right? I mean, you've got a Joe Manchin and you've got a AOC in the same place. So we have to cut them a little slack. My answer is, it's corrupt. It's not that these people truly have the courage of their convictions. Does Joe Manchin even have any convictions? I have no idea. He does what he's told. He does what the pharmaceutical industry, which has made him a multi-millionaire, wants. He does what the coal industry, which has made him a multi-millionaire, wants. Doesn't matter if it's good for the people of West Virginia. It's not. So that's not a big tent I want to be part of. That's not a big tent I'm going to be under. You want me to support your candidate? Become a Green. Endorse progressive, pro-life, pro-worker, pro-environment candidates. Just a little more, because again, this is who your Democratic Party put up as the best choice to run for president.
Effect. Again, I'll say, the election didn't turn out like we wanted it to. Certainly not as we planned for it to. But understand that the work we put into it was about empowering people. That's the spirit with the work we did. Our spirit and our work was about saying that it is a strength that we each have to lift people up, as opposed to beating people down. It is a strength we have.
So it sounds good, right? It's a strength to lift people up, not beat them down. What specific policy did you push to promote, to say this is how we're going to lift people up, not beat them down? Right now, we're beating people down terribly, both around the world and at home. And I didn't hear any policies, really. Yeah, there was a break for first-time home buyers. Okay, well, a little bit, little edges for a few people, right? But in terms of a broad-based policy to make life better for tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans, billions around the world, nothing, nada. In fact, pulling back from anything that might have actually led to improvements, real improvements, whether it was Medicare for all, whether it's fracking, not having, not expanding our drilling, our production, whether it's peace. Harris is against all of that. We'll have the most lethal military in the world. Now, again, it's not to dunk on her, and she hears a little more corner. Again, the whole idea, was she drunk? I don't know. Look, I can't speak to that. She definitely appeared medicated. She definitely appeared somehow sedated in that first segment. It doesn't really matter, except, again, this is somebody who's not putting the interests of the American public first. And that's why she was chosen by the Democrat Party to be their candidate. That's why you have to move with me, and we have to unify in support of an alternative, of an emerging party
that has lasting effect. So all that work that you did that was about engaging with other people, engaging with perfect strangers and in their face seeing a neighbor, that has lasting effect. It reminds people.
It's all just complete platitudes. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. I got to do something about that. So here's Bernie. Bernie is telling you, after he was full on, wholly behind Kamala, right? We have to elect her. Full on. And what does he tell you? And I know I showed this before, but it's a free-for-all. It's a Friday. It's a Black Friday free-for-all. They ain't changing. And that, somewhat embarrassing performance by Kamala Harris, doesn't that tell you they ain't changing? We have to go in a different direction. Our progressive institutions, they don't get it. I do this program because I want desperately something better. I can't, the world we're in right now still has some real beauty in it. Some real, caring, concern, their love. It's there. But it's talking about being beaten down, destroyed, whether it's by, our support, our 2,000-pound bombs and our 500-pound bombs destroying entire regions, whether it's globalism that's gutted the heartland and left, record levels of homeless people in this country. We're losing what good is left. We're not bringing it back. This is a function of both parties being completely captive to the billionaire class. And even in some ways, Democrats are worse because a former billionaire, Trump, was able to kind of use his own money to have some, perhaps, independence from some billionaires. Although, again, Adelson, Mary Mandelson, Israeli, Zionist, was his biggest funder, apparently, and we see that in policies that he's going to perpetuate. We have to move away from both of these two horrible parties and the leadership, which is so completely morally bankrupt in both parties. Bernie just told you that. Kamala told you that. Yeah, Ari's saying it's money. It is money. It's definitely money. But it's also our fault, right? Because we didn't have to vote for Hillary in 2016. We had Bernie as an option. Is Bernie perfect? No, but he would have been so much better. And he would have won. We didn't have to vote for Biden in 2020. We had Bernie as an option. He would have been better. Wouldn't have been perfect. He would have been better. So as much as it's money and people, the ads and the this and the that, as voters, we had some agency. And we didn't use it correctly. We allowed ourselves to be swayed by false prophets, by TV, and by institutions that we may have put some faith in. Now, I get it, PDA and Our Evolution and others definitely did support Bernie. I give them that much credit. But they are unwilling to pivot away from this now evidently beyond peradventure morally bankrupt party. So even after Bernie and they were Bernie supporters, right? Now, I think there was maybe a little bit of honesty with those groups, with those parties. They were recognizing how bad the Democratic leadership is, the Democratic establishment was, and they were thinking, well, maybe we can change it. And I thought that. But at some point, you put away childish things. You stop thinking as a child. And Bernie's he just told us that after he spent all that time trying to rally people to vote for Harris, he said, no, it's not going to change. Party ain't going to change. Highly unlikely. So what does PDA say? Join us this Sunday. What steps should progressives take to make sure the party chooses the right direction? It's how can you make this stuff up? There's no steps progressives can take. The party is wholly resistant to progressives. All of the postmortems that you're hearing from any Democratic insider is that it was social issues, it was trans, it was wokeism. I'm not saying they're completely wrong about that. But the reason those positions, those slice and dice positions, let's stand with the trans community rather than female, athletes who may lose slots on sports teams as a result. The reason those positions have so much resonance, let's stand with immigrants rather than with native-born Americans whose jobs are under pressure because of an increasingly large workforce with competition from immigrants. the reason those issues, and I'm not saying the Democrats are wrong on those issues necessarily. I think we do have a duty to people who seek refuge in our country, especially from the neoliberal policies that we have, that America has promoted and that has so destabilized much of the third world, the developing world. Of course we have, I think the immigrants are human beings. They should be treated. We need to figure out ways to incorporate them into our society and stop pushing them away out of their countries by our destabilizing foreign policy. All that is true. But the reason those issues, those woke issues, have so much resonance is because Democrats aren't for economic justice. They aren't fighting for Medicare for all. They aren't fighting for debt-free colleges and universities and secure retirement. And they never will. Never's a long time, but they're not in the foreseeable future. There's no way you're going to be able to sway the Democratic Party. And the claim that you will, the way PDA and Our Revolution, these other groups do it, is just a way to separate you from your money. Oh, help us move the Democratic Party. No, you can't. What it does is it continues to promote divisiveness. What do you think of a huge alliance with PDA, Code Pink, Our Revolution? Of course I'd love them to join with the Green Party, absolutely, and promote non-democratic options. And really only non-democratic options at this point, unless it's a candidate who runs as a Democrat but runs against the Democratic Party, runs with the explicit policy proposal of taking on they will vote against Hakeem Jeffries to be the leader. They will not, they will vote against anybody who takes corporate PAC money. I'm not saying no PAC money because you have unions, but who takes any corporate. If you take corporate PAC money, I'm voting against you. You take money from military contractors, I'm voting against you to be House leader. I'm voting against you to be the leader of our state delegation. If you take money from the big pharma, if you take money from the police unions, that's a little bit iffier, but you take money from military contractors, I'm voting against you. Period. That's the only way I could see myself voting for Democrat at this point. That's not PDA. PDA's, how do we move the Democratic Party in our progressive direction? Ain't going to happen. So I saw this tweet, similar topic, right? Progressives who aren't progressive. Progressives who push the Democratic Party. Faux-gressives, as I call them. And this is all on the way. This is, these stories are evergreen. They just keep happening and happening. I saw this from David Sirota, and he is an interesting character because he, like many others, will challenge the Democratic Party except when push comes to shove, except when it comes time to vote, which is the only time they care about, except when it comes to trying to turn people out to vote for the Democrat, which is the only time they care about. So here's Sirota. He supported Harris. So he goes after Pod Save America. Those are the Barack Obama bros who I guess are taking a position against the wokeism of the Dems. So he's critical of them. Pod Save America are the people whose brand of politics destroyed the party and marginalized populism in service of the donor class. Well, there's truth to that. Their effort now is to be the arbiters of what should Dems do, which I'm not following them, so I don't know. But what he continues on to say is it's time to turn the page. So my response was, are you calling for folks to turn the page away from the Democratic Party and lesser of two evils politics? If so, welcome to the resistance. And I put that up earlier this morning, so I don't know that, or this morning. So I don't know if Sirota will respond or even has responded. My guess is he won't. He did respond to some tweets. I'd love to see if he does. But that would be quite a shock because he's always been there. He's always gone on democratic progressive institution programs like Our Revolution, like PDA, like his own Belever News, and called for folks to vote for the lesser of two evils, the Democrats. Here's another guy. I've gone after Jank here. He's a really interesting take. I want to play this. So they talk about this poll where so many Americans now think the Democratic Party is on the wrong track, is not a positive influence, is not, moving us in the right direction. So here's Cenk on that.
Are going to be. So first of all, I'm ecstatic that more people are pessimistic about the Democratic Party. Why? I'm a Democrat, and why would I be happy about that? It's because I think the Democratic Party has been going in the wrong direction for a long time. So if most of the Democratic voters, or now at least half the Democratic voters, have become pessimistic about its direction, good, because then maybe you could change the direction so we can actually win elections rather than getting our asses handed to us by.
All right, so again, here his whole point there is we can change the Democratic Party. If enough people are upset about the Democratic Party, we can change it. Why would he think that? Why does he think that if enough people, the only way you get change is if you don't vote for them? In this election, lots of people did not vote for Kamala Harris. A lot of people of color. Sabby Sabs did an analysis of the Georgia vote where a significant number of black Georgians just stayed home. They're like, we don't see we're not represented by these candidates, was the take. And, the Dems knew this was going to happen. They knew she wasn't popular. She got 0 votes in the primary. She got zero primary votes. What do you call it when the race to whatever 1,200, whatever, however many votes you need in the primaries? She didn't get them. She got 0 in 2020. So the Dems know that she's not popular. She was routinely polling lower, meaning Kamala was routinely polling lower than Biden, who was extremely unpopular earlier this year. So it was obvious to the Democratic elites, the leadership class, the decision makers, the establishment. They all knew how Kamala was not approved by voters, and they still chose her. They still said, well, we'll roll the dice. Apparently, I did not know this. All of their internal polling said they were going to lose. It was only the New York Times and the other pollsters who suggested Ann Selzer, DMR, Des Moines Register. They were the ones who said, oh, yeah, she's going to win. She's got a lead. She's this. She probably has an advantage. According to the Harris team, their internal polls consistently showed her losing to Trump. So they know all of that, and they still run with her. They still roll the dice with Harris because they don't really. Losing is much better than winning with a real progressive candidate. Not that there were any even out there. So Cenk's take isn't, belies the reality. Dissatisfaction by the base, a dissatisfied Democratic base, is not going to change the Democratic Party. And him putting his hopes in that is unrealistic. It's fooling his audience. That's not how we bring about change, Cenk.
Frickin' Trump, right? So I would want that number to be as high as possible so we go in a new direction. Now, secondarily...
So a new direction is not, for Cenk, is not the Green Party, is not a rising party, an established, an emerging party. It's the Democrats. Well, at some point, you stop kicking yourself, right? You stop banging your head against the wall, you hope. But apparently that's not what happens because Democratic, even these so-called progressive institutions like these podcasters, like Our Revolution, like PDA, they're invested in the Democratic Party. They feel they have some access. They get people like Ro Khanna to come on their programs. They get donations, contributions from Dems. They have Dems on their boards of directors, etc. They cannot break with the Democratic Party. So Cenk says in that clip, I didn't play it, but it's pretty relevant, that Republican voters are not dissatisfied with the Republican Party. Now, part of that is they just won the election, right? But he points out that in 2020, Republican voters expressed satisfaction by and large, much higher levels. In 2020, after Trump lost, Republican voters expressed much higher levels of satisfaction with the Republican Party than Democrats do now. And the reason, Cenk says, and I think he's absolutely right about this, is that Republican voters feel, right, Trump voters, because this was, after the election in 2020, Trump voters felt that they had beaten back the corrupt Republican establishment, that the candidates that the Republican establishment wanted, people like Rubio, Cruz, the party of Mitch McConnell, if you will, had been defeated. That was the perception, the belief among Republican voters. And therefore, they are satisfied. Democrat voters on the other hand say, hey, we didn't really want Kamala. We never wanted Kamala. We never voted for Kamala in a primary. She didn't win any Democratic primary. She didn't get any, votes for the nomination in 2020. And she didn't run in 2024. So, of course, we're dissatisfied and we lost. The party is completely in the control of the corporate elites. So, of course, Democrats are unhappy with that. Cenk goes on to say that he implies strongly, I don't think he says it, but you can find the clip somewhere. He implies strongly that Republican voters are wrong when they believe that they've defeated the corporate control, that they've wrested control of the Republicans from corporations. They're wrong. And this story, I wanted to show it. Now, Democrats better hope that. And I think in some ways we should hope that too. And the reason I say that is because the Republican Party, or the party of Trump, there are some aspects to the policies that Trump at least enunciates that I like, right? I like tariffs. Tariffs are good. I like his sporadic, periodic nods towards peace. I hope we get those. Those would be good. But at least when it comes to economics, if right-wing authoritarian populism is successful, in other words, if Trump pursues the at least job growth policies, tariffs and the like that he is, and also, frankly, the anti-immigrant policies, that will lead to higher standards of living for millions of workers. He'll get either he or his handpicked successor, probably not him if he doesn't try to, it won't be him unless he tries to stay in power illegally. But if he has some sort of handpicked successor, maybe a J.D. Vance, someone like that, they'll win in a landslide if Trump pushes the tariffs as he describes them through. And sadly, if he's able to deport millions of immigrants, then wages will rise for working class people, and they will be very pleased, and they will vote for him again. And that will lead to many bad things, especially the use of the military to deport people, to spy on us, to take away even whatever freedoms we might still have left. So will Trump betray his base? Well, according to President Sheinbaum, there she is from Mexico, a tariff war will be averted. Now, if Trump doesn't impose those tariffs, he said he's going to put them on Mexico, that's a big deal. That's bad for workers if he doesn't impose those tariffs. Mexico has a lower minimum wage, significantly lower than the United States. We lose many jobs to Mexico. It's right, super close, right? Mexican production facilities and storage facilities are a couple of hours from probably 50, 100 million people, at least in California, Arizona, Texas. So maybe not 100 million, maybe 50. I don't know. Los Angeles is so big, and that's just 3 hours from the border, I believe. So San Diego is the second largest city in California. So those the lower wages, the significantly lower wages that are paid in Mexico compared to the United States, is a significant factor in reduced employment or lower wages in the United States. It's not the only one. There's many others. Amazon is a big problem for sure. The Amazon shopper, the what is it? The cheap places, the cheap food distributors that they have. Amazon Fresh, that's what I'm thinking of. Sorry, Amazon Fresh, and others that don't pay. I believe Walmart. Walmart's not unionized, I don't believe. Maybe their food workers are, but I don't know about that. So those are also major negative factors in wages. Apparently, Trump is hiring a nominate a pro-union labor secretary. If that's the case, that will be a really good thing for American workers. I'm not going to talk about that today much more or anymore, but maybe next week. In any event, if Trump betrays workers and doesn't pursue the tariff against Mexico, that will be a problem for American workers. And it will certainly help the Democratic Party. We'll see if that happens. That is a consistent with, and I'm, again, of two minds. Because a lot of what Trump does, I really can't stand. I've always said the worst thing he does with treatment of immigrants, if he does what he says, which is to continue to support the Israeli genocide, that's horrific. So those are really bad policies. On the other hand, I do want things to get better for working people. According to the New York Times, Trump's trade agenda could benefit friends and punish rivals. This is from last week. I mentioned this article in the Halitics Facebook group, which I do urge you to join if you're not a member of. And I also urge you, again, sign up for Halitics videos, right? My YouTube stream, please do. I don't totally trust the New York Times. They're always looking for ways to bash Trump. But this is consistent with what Sheinbaum said, the president of Mexico, which is there won't be a tariff war, a trade war with the United States after she spoke to Trump. She wasn't clear what he said. So again, this is all iffy. This is all speculative. Trump may be more willing to go through with the tariffs that he promised. And I hope, for the American workers' sake, he does. It would be better for America. But according to the New York Times, there's a lot of influence peddling. There could be a lot of exemptions and exceptions to the tariffs. Some companies could avoid paying them. Now, if that happens, that's terrible. That's the swamp. That's even more corruption. That's more bribery, paying, off officials so that you're on the list where you don't have to pay the tariff. You get to take advantage of cheap foreign labor, but your competitors don't. It's hard to imagine a worse option, a worse outcome than that. So all we can do is hope it doesn't happen. And pressure, right? That's why we need a Green Party, because the Democrats couldn't care less. But if you had a Green Party that was saying, hey, we agree with Trump on the tariffs, but we need to hold him accountable, then that could happen. Yeah, I mean, this is critical that we have an alternative to the duopoly. What's a worst case scenario? What's the worst? This is why, again, we need an alternative. This isn't about how the Democrats are bad and the Republicans aren't. They're both terrible. Here's Senator Rand Paul.
Line on this issue.
The stories all said he would declare an emergency to use the military to remove people. I'm not for that. I'm not for really most presidential.
But I want to stop it there. So I wanted to just play this clip. I'm going to play more of it in a second. I hate the way those pop-ups come in. One of the claims by many of the Trump people is the parade of horribles that anti-Trumpers, the New York Times, promote. Trump's going to round people up. Trump's going to declare himself dictator. Glenn Greenwald says this too, that those are exaggerations, that Trump isn't nearly as bad as he's portrayed in the, quote, liberal, unquote, media. And, you know, I buy into that to a degree. They certainly do paint him as a demon. And to a degree, I think that's a bit unfair. But here's Rand Paul saying, no, I know all the stories say he's going to use the military. He's threatening to use the army to round up immigrants. So Rand Paul is believing that. This guy, Rob Schmidt, some extreme righty, is in favor of those policies, as is Laura Ingraham from Fox News. So it does appear that there's a real legitimate reason to fear, as we should fear, the U.S. military being deployed to round up people. It's terrifying. It's absolutely Nazi-like. It's absolutely like what the Israelis are doing. And Rand Paul is credible when he says, no, this is something we have to worry about, and it's something we have to oppose.
Because they smack of martial rule, they smack of no congressional approval, they smack of no checks and balances. So look, I'm supportive of President Trump. I'm supportive of removing people illegally here, particularly people who've committed crimes. But I'm not for the army marching up and down our streets. I think it's a terrible image to send the world. It's a terrible image for us as citizens. And so I hope he will think twice about trying to use an emergency edict to have the army patrolling our country.
And I'll stop it there. And then the Fox, or it's not even Fox Newsmax, which I guess is even worse than Fox. The guy tries to make, defend it and talk about why we need these extreme, drastic measures. He says drastic. Well, American workers will support drastic measures because they're struggling. We talked about this. People do support just about anything. They believe what they believe, conspiracy theories. They'll believe the sky is falling when they feel desperate, when they feel exploited. And American workers are exploited. American workers are, to a very significant degree, desperate. They're going to lose what little they still have. Or at least that's what they legitimately fear. So what Trump proposes will get quite a bit of support. And the only way we're going to fight that is if we truly embrace pro-worker, pro-peace policies. Democrats aren't going to do that. Democrats aren't capable of defeating Trumpism at this point. All they're capable of is providing a pale imitation of Trumpism. That's why you heard Kamala talk about building a wall. She supported building a wall as well. That's why you heard Kamala talking about unwavering support for Israel. And that's why the wokeism actually is pretty powerful, because people who are struggling, who are desperate, are going to look for any scapegoat, especially if they're not offered a compelling vision for what's wrong in their lives. And what's wrong in their lives is far too much corporate control, no real help from the government, no leadership that is divorced from their exploiters, the people that are actually taking advantage of them, treating them like peons. Their jobs is disposable, and their only value is as consumers. Democratic Party isn't addressing it. That's how the Democratic Party treats them just as much as the Republican. So a story like this, and I'm going to talk, focusing on wokeism, this caught my attention. This is why the woke issues are such a loser for the Democratic Party. So this was in yesterday's New York Times, and I really caught this here. The San Jose State, and this I kind of looked into this story a little bit in response to a post on activist Dems on Facebook, where a commenter there argued that trans athletes, and trans athletes are almost invariably with very few exceptions, trans females, trans women or trans girls. I guess trans female isn't a term. You can't trans into being a female. You can't transition into being a female. You're either conceived as a female or conceived as a male, with almost no exceptions, a tiny, tiny number. So there are almost no trans boys and trans men who compete in sports. There's like one, I think, at Yale. And I think is that? No. So that swimmer is a biological male who's swimming on the Yale, I believe, men's swimming team. So they were conceived male. They went through male puberty. They have male musculature. So they're physiologically capable of competing against men at high levels. But they also transitioned to a degree as a woman, but they stopped taking their hormones and all that because then they couldn't compete against males. So it's a trans girl or woman, really, a trans woman competing against other biological males. Okay, that's one example. And that's not even a real example, because a real example would be a trans boy or trans man competing against other males, against males. And we just don't see that because biological females just don't have, there just are virtually no biological females who can compete against males at the highest level. So why does this issue have so much potency? Well, one reason is, people just say it's not fair. It's not fair that a trans woman is playing volleyball against biological women. And this is from the New York Times. When Melissa Batty Smoose, the Spartans, San Jose Spartans, and it's San Jose State Spartans, which is a D1 school that offers scholarships to their athletes. So when Coach Batty Smoose joined the team as an assistant coach, she did not know that they had a transgender, in other words, a male, a biological male on the team. But when she saw him, when she saw her playing, she told the coach, his name is Kress, she, meaning the trans girl, the trans woman, hits and blocks like a dude. That's what she told the New York Times. She also said that individual, that trans woman, didn't lift weights because she feared getting too muscular. Now, I read that with some skepticism. I believe if the New York Times writer wrote it, unless I have reason to disbelieve it, in other words, if Batty Smoose came forward and said, I never said that, I'd be like, okay, I believe that she didn't say it. But I believe she did say it because the New York Times says she did. But I also don't know if it's really true. I don't know if it's really fair to say that, I don't know if it's true that this trans woman didn't lift weights because she feared getting too muscular, or that she jumped so high that she looked more like a man. She played like a man. Maybe, but I'm a little skeptical. So maybe they weren't that dominant. But then I did a little more research. And before we get to that, though, I just want to show this one other piece from the article. The coach said her concern, and I totally agree with this. Well, I want to say fully, I, on balance, agree with this. It seems to me correct. Women shouldn't, in other words, biological females should not lose playing spots or scholarships to transgenders, to Ts. And I just don't see an argument against that. I don't know what's your argument to say that isn't the case. To me, the answer is, if you want to play sports and you're a boy or a young man and you want to play competitive sports at a high level, don't transition. You have a choice. You want to become or transition into becoming a female, but you also want to compete in college sports, don't transition. Transition after your college career is over. You want to transition, but you will have to sacrifice your being a D1 athlete, a college athlete, a high school athlete, or make the decision like the Yale athlete that you'll, even after you transition, you will compete against other men, or you will compete against men and boys. To me, that's it. There's no stigma. There's no criticism. We're not saying you're a bad person. We're not saying anything else. We're saying it's unfair for biological males to take scholarships and roster spots from females. And I just don't see what's wrong with that. I don't see what is unfair about that. I see in the chat, my grade school nephew is a trans boy and plays soccer on the boys team. Okay, well, so there you have a girl who's competing with boys. Grade school. Yeah, I mean, maybe in lower, that maybe I'm going to assume is before you even, I don't know, how do you transition in grade school? She's a trans boy, so is she taking male hormones at that age? I would think that's a little worrisome. But okay, maybe grade school you don't have. I'm willing to listen to any differing view. But grade school is one thing. A high school spot where there's limited, roster availability, or college where there's scholarships at stake. No. And again, I think it goes very different when it's a biological female competing against biological males. My suspicion is there are very, very few biological females, even after they transition, who could compete in high school, and virtually none in college on almost any sport. But I might be against it, because if they're taking hormones, if they're taking some kind of steroidal treatments, then that is an unfair advantage. Just a little bit more, though. So the question then is it fair? Is it accurate? Because the coach who was against having a trans girl or trans woman on the team made the point that she hit harder and jumped higher than the other girls. She played like a dude, in her words, according to the New York Times. And according to, this was in yesterday's, San Jose Register, or San Jose Mercury News, rather. According to them, and this is Yahoo Sports, the athlete in question indeed did hit harder and did presumably jump higher than the other women on the team. And so there you have it, the statistics. She led the Spartans in kills. She was a outside hitter. That means you jump up and you slam the ball down. The hitters slam the ball, the setters. And Slessor was a teammate who did not think it was fair, did not want to play with a trans female, trans girl, trans woman. I'm having trouble with the terminology. It should never be trans female. Female is your biology. Trans woman. She did not want to play with a trans woman. And it's understandable. Again, I don't think, for two reasons, and they're both equally important, I believe. One is for safety's sake, and two is that there's a limited number of scholarships. At least once you get into high school, you play against your biological sex. You play with and against your biological sex. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. And I've got a couple more stories I wanted to get to. But I'm going to just go with this one because it is Friday. It's the free-for-all. I do have a message. No. So let me, and I see a little bit of chat. Great to see you guys in the chat. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I want you to get your weekend going. But I had complained the other day, it was Tuesday, when we had on Kirsten, that I was delayed going live based on technical issues. And I mentioned that I heard this on Due Distance. I thought I'd just play this real quick and then get to the story I want to talk about real quick. But here we go.
All right, so folks in the chat, this fixed?
It sounds louder to me now.
Yeah,
So that should
good.
be good.
All right,
Yeah.
so now it's on auto. It's on my normal settings now.
All right.
Yeah, after I rebooted with new software, it defaulted to manual, and I didn't realize.
Nice. All right. There you go. Yep. Sounds good now. Chat
Yeah.
says good, Russell.
All right, so he, again, had a problem where he says he rebooted with new software. My problem was I updated Windows and I didn't check, and he talks about that later. You got to always check. You got to always check. So that put me in mind. I use Linux whenever possible, but Linux I cannot use for the live stream. The reason is because the virtual audio cables that I use, and that routes audio all over the place. That routes audio from your calls to me into my speaker. It routes music to me. It routes calls to guests if I have them. It's pretty sophisticated, and yet apparently these are 20 plus years old. The program I'm using is over 20 years old. Only works on Windows, and I guess it works on Macs, but not quite the same way. I don't use Mac. So I can't use it. It just isn't available for Linux. I'm sure you could write a program for Linux. Well, I couldn't write one. Maybe someone else could. I'm sure someone could, but I couldn't. But it reminded me of this. When I was doing radio for years and years, I did radio from 2005 to 2014. And the entire time, this was the program. It isn't the entire time, actually. I started off using Windows 2000 for a few years, even though Windows XP was introduced in 2001. And 4 years later, we used Windows 2000 because the vendor, the software vendor that our automation software, so all the music, we didn't really do music, all the talk shows, the advertisements, the programs that we were bringing in by satellite, they all were put on the air through Windows XP computer using a program called Simian, which SIMIAN, which was, it's still there. I think it's the gold standard in radio software. There's not much radio left, but it's still the gold standard. And people who use internet radio use it. So Broadcast Software International recommended when I started in 2005 that we use Windows 2000, not XP. And they did a lot of testing, and they tested and they tested, and finally they said, okay, we can use Windows XP. And we did. We transitioned to Windows XP from 2000. It was better. It actually was better. It could do more. They never went to 7 7 came out in, I think, 11, maybe 9. No, it was 09, 08, 09. Maybe it was 2007. I don't know. There was Vista. Vista, maybe 2006, they never went to Vista. Then they came to Windows 7. It took forever. I think they're finally at Windows 11 now, maybe. But according to How to Geek, and I totally agree with this, Windows XP was so stable, no crashes, everything worked the way it should. I get weird, funky stuff now. I have little conflicts between what I do with the Windows updates and the OBS Studio that I use. That may or may not be the program Russell was complaining about. When you update, it wipes out your settings. This was the best software that Windows ever made, I think, without question. I hope that at some point Linux is compatible with those virtual audio cables, because in a heartbeat I would stop using Windows if I could. All right, yes, nerding out I am. Guys and gals, hope there are some women watching. I know, listening, I know generally political talk is more oriented towards the male. I think that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I will be back Monday. Enjoy your weekend.